Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day to everyone. We're so thrilled to be launching this webinar today. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Kristen Wolf. I'm the Vice President of Programs at EMpower. And I'm also honored today to be moderating this webinar. Just a few weeks ago, next slide, please. Just a few weeks ago, EMpower launched a window of opportunity programming with and for very young adolescent girls. This report is a very proud moment for all of us at EMpower because we are also celebrating our 20th anniversary. At EMpower, we've had a focus on adolescent girls since 2006. That focus has grown and deepened every year. About 2 years ago, we decided to increase our intention and spotlight very young adolescent girls. And in order to do this, we needed to learn more. For us, this meant we needed to learn directly from very young adolescent girls themselves and the community-based organizations that work closely with them. So now, here we are in 2020. What a year it's been. We all know that COVID, the pandemic, has increased gender, social, and economic inequalities. It has thrown unprecedented challenges at local community-based organizations and the young female populations that they work with and for. I say all of this because the title of the report, A Window of Opportunity, it turns out it has two meanings. One is that the age range of 10 to 14-year-old girls provides a pivotal window, a window of opportunity, to center on girls early before irreversible outcomes occur. But actually now we know the title has two meanings. And by this, I mean in 2020, this is an opportunity. This is a moment, a pivotal moment for philanthropy and for the development community to also focus on very young adolescent girls in our COVID response and to work closely or more closely with local community-based organizations. This report is being shared at a time when prioritizing and focusing on community-based organizations because they need now more than ever the financial, material, long-term, and flexible support to sustain and deepen their very young adolescent girl work. Before we get started, I just want to say we would like to dedicate this webinar to all the adolescent girls out there in EMpower supported programs and beyond. You inspire us and you motivate us to do our very best by, for, and with you. Next slide, please. In a moment, I get to introduce everybody on the panel and also greet you with our colleagues from Norsaac and our researchers and our special guests from Girls Voices Initiative. We're also going to go through, obviously, the bulk of the webinar is the report findings, have a lot of question and answer with all of you, and then wrap up by talking about next steps. Next slide, please. So today we have 4 speakers. I myself am moderating, and I have a co-moderator who I will introduce very shortly. Our speakers today are Jennifer Catino, she's the project lead, and Emily Bazzini, who's the research lead. We also are very honored to have a longtime EMpower grantee partner from Norsaac. Joining us from Northern Ghana is Rafia. She's a 14-year-old girl and one of the program participants. And Hafsatu Sumani, she's the co-founder and head of programs and policy at Norsaac. Next slide, please. So before we begin, don't forget the webinar will be recorded and it's available right here, clicking on that link later on. You can submit questions at any time during this webinar as we're going through the findings, as you're hearing from and learning from the experiences of Norsaac. Favor will be talking about her experiences in Nigeria. Please submit your questions anytime. If you would like to, you can highlight who you would like the question to be answered from. And also, for those of you who have joined on our audience, you can download the full report here on your platform in one of the tabs off to the right, I believe. So the download report, you can click there if you're listening from our audience. And before, yes, we can go to the next slide, please. In about 20 seconds, I'm going to introduce to you my co-moderator, Favor. But before she comes on, I'd like to say a few things about her and about Girls Voices Initiative. Girls Voices Initiative is a 2020 Within for Girls award-winning organization. Girls Voices are building a girl-centric girls' rights movement, and they are raising disruptive girl leaders who are demanding their seat at the table. As the founder, Carolyn Seaman, says, when we look at Nigeria's over 20 million adolescent girls, we see 20 million solution innovators. To date, Girls Voices Initiative has reached over 300,000 girls with rights education and various empowerment programs. All of you today joining us in our audience are about to have the honor of hearing from Favor, who is one of those girl leaders, disruptors, and social innovators. She is 19 years old, and we're so thrilled that she's my co-moderator today. Over to you, Favor.
Thank you so much, Christine. Hello, girls. Welcome to all the wonderful girls and the distinguished guests in this webinar. We are all in for a memorable learning experience. I'm so thrilled to be part of this amazing webinar. It's so nice to have us all here despite our different time zones and the global changes that we are all facing at this time. I am so grateful for this virtual learning space. I am excited that this program is centered around very young adolescent girls, though I never had the opportunity to participate in girl-focused programs as a very young adolescent girl. I understand the importance of introducing innovative programs to adolescent girls, and that is why I am so excited that we are learning to focus on very young adolescent girls. I was born in a family where the boys were valued more than the girls, and being the last and only girl, that puts me in a lot of disadvantages. I was constantly reminded that I will never be enough, and that made me to lose confidence in myself. It was so bad that I would be too scared to raise up my hands to answer questions in class, not because I was dumb or stupid, or because I didn't know the answers to those questions, but because I don't have the confidence to speak up for myself, despite what I was feeling at this very young age. I had no safe space to express myself and share my feelings. I couldn't do that in school because I attended a mixed gender school, and there were no activities that engaged us as girls or allowed us to just express ourselves. That was why my life, until one day I was selected to attend a girl summit to mark the International Day of the Girl, organized by Girls Voices. I was only 16 years old at the time, but being in a program specially organized for girls by girls was a whole new experience for me. I had never seen that before. The whole summit was moderated by girls. There were girl panelists, girl judges. The presentations were delivered by girls, and that just bet something in me that day. After that program, I started to see myself differently. I began to fight the fear of not enough, and I have grown to build my confidence and knowledge of my rights so much that I was able to stand up to my parents when they wanted to marry me off to a man twice my age. I negotiated my chances to pursue my education first. Girls' Voices discovered me and trained me with the right advocacy skills, and I now work with Girls' Voices as a girl leader and a girls' rights advocate. I am 19 years old now, and I'm currently the chair of the Adolescent Girls Advisory Board at Girls' Voices Initiative. My work includes researching on issues concerning girls, co-planning of events and activities, and providing advice to the organization and to younger girls. The most amazing thing is that I get to see projects that I have researched and worked on being turned into innovative programs that benefit other girls. today. My parents are proud of me, and I must say that I'm proud of myself also. But please, I want us all to imagine this with me. Let us all imagine that that summit I attended when I was 16 years old, I attended it a little bit earlier, say when I was 12 years old. Don't you think that would have made a world of difference in my life? I would have gone through all those, I wouldn't have gone through all those burdens I carried deep down inside my heart for so many years. All those silent tears I shed because I felt I would never be enough. All those opportunities I lost because I did not have the confidence to do so. And all those feelings of seeing myself as inferior. No girl should have to go through that. This should never be any girl's experience. I strongly believe that introducing impactful programs for very young adolescent girls give them a chance and a stepping stone to a greater future. So, if you're a young girl listening to me today, wherever you are in the was designed and targeted to you. And I strongly believe that your participation in this webinar will make a world of difference today. So, I join in to welcome you all to this webinar as we share and learn together. And as our girl programs go, we often have engaging activities. So let's take a quick poll together. For our first poll question, we want to know who we have on the webinar today. Tell us if you're a young person or youth leader, a practitioner, a researcher, a funder, or donor. All that apply to you, and I will give us all a few minutes to send that in. I'm sure you all seeing your screen right now. Please tick all that apply to you and submit. Wow, impressive. Awesome, awesome. I believe you're all picking your answers. Please, we really want to hear from you. Let me give us all a few minutes to tick our answers and submit.
The answers, the results are on the screen. Go ahead.
So our results are out. I can see 21% of young person, 37% of practitioner. That is so amazing. 25% of researchers, 23% of funders. Wow. 27% implementing partners. I'm so happy we actually have young people in this platform today because this is for you. You are the reason why we're here. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much for giving us your feedback. I'll hand over to Jen now for her to give us a quick highlight of the project and research. Over to you, Jen.
Okay, next slide, please. Wow, Favor, thank you so much for grounding us in the realities and tremendous power and benefits of partnering with adolescent girls. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. To set the stage for sharing our research findings, I want to provide some context and background about the project. So as Kristen mentioned, EMpower was motivated by growing sensitivity to the diversity of adolescence and the adolescent experience, and increasing evidence of the rapid physical, cognitive, and social changes that occur in early adolescence, and both the potential risks and opportunities that those present. Through this, EMpower became interested in championing interventions with and for girls during this crucial period. And by way of definition, please note that EMpower defines girl as anyone aged 10 to 19 who identifies as a girl, and very young adolescents as those between the ages of 10 and 14. With a focus on very young adolescent girls, EMpower was keen to learn more about how to support the work of their grantees in this area. So it was in that spirit that we set out to understand if and how EMpower grantees were working with girls in this life stage, as well as what was known about good program practice at local and global levels. We began with an assumption that age and gender differentiated programming was relatively rare, but as we explored the landscape, we found that there was indeed rich experience in this space, including at the grassroots. So to better understand the state of programming with very young adolescent girls, we reviewed, collected, and synthesized information from a range of primary and secondary sources. These included global literature reviews and program scans that revealed an abundance of peer-reviewed and gray literature about many aspects of the adolescent experience, but little squarely focused on what works in programming with girls during this life stage and across varied contexts. We undertook an online survey with EMpower grantees, which identified that many more than we anticipated were already actively implementing programming with girls ages 10 to 14. We conducted in-depth interviews with key informants from the global and local practice and research communities that allowed us to more deeply explore what stakeholders were doing and learning about how to effectively engage and support very young adolescent girls. And we undertook insight exercises and focus groups with girls ages 10 to 14, as well as slightly older peers, to gather their perspectives about girls' needs and interests during this period, and how programming with and for them can best respond. So the report, A Window of Opportunity, Programming with and for Very Young Adolescent Girls, captures a synthesis of what we learned by bringing these data streams together. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Emily, the project research lead, to share details about the findings and related recommendations. Thank you, and over to you, Emily.
Hi there, next slide. Oh, great. So I'm Emily. I'm going to quickly discuss the 6 main findings that emerged from the report, as well as the recommendations that were associated with those findings. Next slide, please. So the first finding that emerged from our research is that local grassroots organizations are doing innovative, targeted work with very young adolescent girls to a much greater degree than previously realized. You can see this in the results of the online survey that we fielded with active EMpower grantees. This data is from 2018, but even at that time, over 80% of survey respondents were actively programming with VYA girls, and nearly 65% were using programming approaches and content specific to VYA girls. So right away, this suggested a much more expansive universe of programming than we thought was out there. Next slide, please. This was further reinforced as we delved into the qualitative aspects of our research. What we found suggests that local grassroots organizations are really at the vanguard here, that they're a current benchmark for best practices in VYA programming. Many of these programs began with a specific focus on improving school performance, reducing rates of adolescent pregnancy, or preventing gender-based violence, to name just a few examples. They then evolved in more holistic directions over time. This programming has also moved younger over time as organizations continue to hone their understanding of the needs and capacities of very young adolescent girls. Next slide, please. One programmer, who is affiliated with a Mexican organization that actively changed its approach based on input from young people, put it like this. As we listened and learned more about the lived realities and expressed needs of young people in our communities, we broadened our focus. And that's really representative of what we found across the board here in terms of the approach of local grassroots organizations. Next slide, please. We would also like to spotlight in each of these categories going forward an organization that seems to exemplify some of what we're talking about and some of what we found. Here, that's Tiempo de Juego. Tiempo de Juego is a grassroots organization in Colombia that works in an area where there is a significant amount of violence and gang activity, and where drug abuse, teen pregnancy, and school dropout rates are high. The organization's entry point into this community was soccer clubs that were intended to promote learning through play. But Tiempo de Juego has grown over time and now offers a range of activities driven by the interests of its program participants. It uses a near-peer mentoring approach, training older girls to work with VYAs between the ages of 11 and 16. And it also models gender equity institutionally through its pay scales and the composition of its leadership team. Next slide, please. The second finding that emerged from our research is that meaningful involvement of very young adolescent girls is essential to success. This is what makes local grassroots programming so effective. These organizations are doing impactful organic work hand in hand with VYA girls, and this allows for the creation of truly girl-driven programs and organizations. These organizations incorporate girls into their leadership structures, give them real input into all aspects of programming, and invest and reinvest in developing the skills of girl participants as they age up into more influential positions within the organization. This isn't always easy. Meaningfully involving girls requires time, effort, resources, and patience. But the return on this investment is enormous, as involving girls makes for more flexible, responsive, and girl-centered programs. Next slide, please. This is how one adolescent girl in Barbados described her involvement with one of these organizations. As I have grown with my organization, she said, I see that it gives me a platform to share my ideas and see those things become real. I started as a mentee, then I became a peer leader and then a junior counselor at our summer camp. That position gave me more authority. It was very challenging to go from being a participant to being in charge. This opportunity forced me to mature and take on a different role, and it was not easy. And then I became a program intern. This has allowed me to see how hard it is to do good programming with girls. I want to stay as long as I can, as long as I am useful. Next slide, please. And here we're spotlighting an organization, Brave, that also does a particularly good job of meaningfully involving girls in this way. Brave was inspired by a group of 10-year-old girls in South Africa who wanted to make their school and gang-ridden community safer. The organization works to combat violence and promote girls' empowerment. It runs a leadership camp for girls who are transitioning from middle school to high school, and it also works to foster a sense of permanent belonging among its participants. There are many ways for girls to stay engaged after they've completed the early stages of the program, and older girls are given increasing responsibility for program design and implementation. Next slide, please. The third finding that emerged from our research is that families and communities of VYA girls need to be engaged even when this is not easy. The most effective strategies here engage both families and other duty bearers in the community, so school and governmental officials, community and religious leaders, even girl advocates themselves. The most common approach is to forge partnerships with families and communities at the same time through street plays, family fun days, health fairs, presentations at school meetings, or even additional programming. Most organizations still struggle to engage fathers and non-traditional caregivers. Overall, though, local grassroots organizations are learning that the support of even conservative and traditional communities can be gained through a combination of intensive outreach efforts and demonstrably positive impacts on very young adolescent girls. Next slide, please. An adolescent girl in India put it like this: organizations should speak to parents so that the parents can understand what the program is and then agree to send their children. If organizations speak to the parents at the beginning, chart the full journey and expectations of the program, and share the full curriculum with them, then dropout will be likely much less. Next slide, please. And we're also spotlighting an organization, Bango, that's had particular success in reaching out to families and communities. Bango works with disadvantaged communities in Vietnam and trains at-risk school-aged youth to be peer health educators. These peer educators run school-based training and take an expansive view of their role in the community, to the point that they have independently mobilized to create safe spaces for other young people. But Bango also works to meet family needs. The organization engages in significant community mapping and then mobilizes its network to meet identified needs and build on available resources. The result is that many families strongly identify as Bango families. Next slide, please. So the fourth finding that emerged from our research is that programming should be dynamic and evolve in response to the changing needs and interests of girls. The majority of the people that we interviewed agreed that there are some core content areas that should be included in all programming for VYA girls, including puberty and pubertal changes, menarche and menstrual hygiene, bodily integrity, and consent. But that aside, the most effective programming approach by far is to adapt to the changing needs, interests, and capacities of VYA girls. Girls should be able to take the lead and renegotiate programming as their circumstances change. Otherwise, it should be noted that very few programs currently offer age-differentiated content or content that is specifically tailored for either 10 to 12-year-olds or 13 to 14-year-olds. But most programmers who work with very young adolescent girls feel strongly that this type of programming is necessary. There is also a clear need for gender-synchronized programming, or programming that reaches both boys and girls while providing separate spaces for each. Unfortunately, there is still little consensus about how to do this effectively. Mobilizing male allies is clearly part of transforming gender norms, but it can be difficult to include VYA boys without losing the focus on girls or drowning out girl voices. Next slide, please. The situation is further complicated by the perspective of girls themselves, who often take radically different positions, with some advocating for greater inclusivity and some unwilling or unable to participate in co-ed programming. The two quotations that we've highlighted here represent the two opinion polls that we found. The first, from an adolescent girl in India, reads, "Co-ed sessions are very important so that boys can recognize and appreciate the issues girls face. If boys are trained alone and girls are trained alone, this will never happen." The second, from an adolescent girl in Ghana, takes the opposite view. "I think it would be better if these discussions were separate, because there are some things that girls may not like to discuss when the boys are there. Some people don't feel free to speak when their male counterparts are around. I think that if these things are to be discussed, they should be discussed only among girls." Next slide, please. The fifth finding that emerged from our research is that intentional measures to safeguard girls are critical to program success. Most organizations working with this age range have clearly defined child protection policies and practices in place. But we should stress that obtaining the informed consent of guardians and the informed assent of girls is critical when working with VYA populations. And the consent process should be even more extensive when organizations are conducting any kind of research. But the extra effort is worth it because there are clear benefits to conducting participatory research hand in hand with very young adolescent girls. Next slide, please. One researcher emphasized the value of treating VYAs as co-researchers. They're generating a lot of data through their own activities, she said. And then we always go back to discuss this with them, which I think is right. We share the key results, and then we also ask for more information. So we found this. What do you think about that? Do you recognize that? We don't know how to explain this. Can you help us with that? So that way you get a lot more. And it's a very youth-friendly way of getting their input, perspectives, ideas, and information. They love doing that. They love being experts. Next slide, please. The sixth and last finding that emerged from our research is that strong links between grassroots and global VYA efforts would help propel the field of VYA girl programming and research forward. A significant challenge in VYA programming is the difficulty of scaling programs and diffusing impact while remaining responsive to local needs and true to grassroots models. Large NGOs are investing in rigorous implementation research, but even the most committed grassroots organizations often lack the expertise and resources necessary to effectively analyze the raw data from their own programs. But this is a problem of capacity, not commitment. Next slide, please. One programmer in Zimbabwe spoke of the diaries girls use to record their progress in her program. We asked them to bring the diaries each year, and this allows girls to look back at themselves over time, she said. We reward those who have made progress and can show evidence of their change. Girls keep their diaries and scorecards like credit cards. Yet despite this innovative form of girl follow-up and these rich troves of longitudinal and qualitative data, the organization has struggled financially over the last few years because it needs to demonstrate results in order to raise additional funds. Next slide, please. Local grassroots efforts could benefit substantially from established research practice partnerships. These partnerships would deepen the VYA evidence base, extend access to valuable data sources, and enhance local research capacity. In this sense, it's helpful to spotlight an organization like the Institute of Reproductive Health at Georgetown University, which evaluates programs that teach VYAs about pubertal changes and gender norms. This institution uses diverse and participatory methodologies, including ethnographic and life history research, significant other and best friend interviews, visual and nonverbal approaches, and the use of play. Organizations like this could potentially form valuable research practice partnerships with emerging grassroots organizations. Next slide, please. We come now to the recommendations that emerge from our research. There is an untapped reservoir of learning at the grassroots level that can be built upon to inform future VYA practice in both the global South and the global North. So moving forward, we recommend providing local grassroots organizations with the resources necessary to sustain, evaluate, and scale their work, linking practitioners within and across regions by creating vibrant communities of practice, exploring research practice partnerships, developing platforms to share the experiences and expertise of local grassroots organizations, and acting as catalysts, champions, and amplifiers of work with very young adolescent girls. And now I'll hand things back to Kristen for poll question number 2.
Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you, Jen. So much in there, and I can't wait to kind of get into it even more with the interview with Hosfa coming up and the question and answer section, which is also coming up. So if you all have any questions when you were listening to Jen and Emily, please submit them. Now, before we move on, I'm going to ask you our second poll question. How are you working with girls? We know who you are now. We know who's in the audience. So now we'd really like to understand, what does your current girls' work look like? So here are the questions. Do you currently conduct or support programming and or research with very young adolescent girls? If so, please select any all that apply. Your current programming actively engages very young adolescent girls across the program cycle. You have age segmented programming for 10 to 12, 13 to 14-year-olds. You engage very young girls as co-researchers. You have gender synchronized programming with both very young adolescent girls and boys, and or you are not currently implementing work with very young adolescent girls. We will give you a minute to answer that question. Please do submit your answers. Out of the 5 options, you can select one or more. Just give it a few more seconds. We'll take a few more answers. Okay, here are the answers. Fascinating. Okay, so about 45%, so just less than half, are engaging very young adolescent girls across the program cycle. Second highest, gender synchronized. So some of you, many of you are working both with girls and boys. 33% of you have age segmented programming for the very young adolescent girls, 10 to 12, 13 to 14. 26% of you not yet currently supporting. Thank you for your honest answers. Truly appreciating that. It is anonymous. And about 20% of you are also engaging very young girls as co-researchers. So that's really helpful to get a sense of who's listening and sort of where the audience is at. I hope for all of you who are currently engaging, and for those of you that are thinking about it, you'll get a lot out of this webinar and out of this report. Next slide, please. So I said at the top of the call, we are so honored and grateful to have two folks from Norsaac on this webinar today. Norsaac, as I said earlier, is a longtime partner of EMpower. I think we're about our 10th year of working closely with Norsaac. So now I get to introduce to you Hafsatu Seisumani. She is the co-founder and the head of programs and policy at Norsaac. This all happened in 2002 when Norsaac was founded. Even before that, she's been involved in social and community programming for 20 years. She's been a peer educator. She is a role model. She also happens to have a master's of science in local economic development and a bachelor's in integrated development studies. Hafsa, thank you so much for joining, and I'm so excited to be able to do some question and answer with you now. Do you want to start us off by telling us a little bit more about Norsaac? So Hafsa is going to tell us a little bit about Norsaac, and then we'll get into the question and answer section. Hafsa, over to you.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And then welcome to the audience. Welcome to the webinar. And thanks for joining. Just to start with, Norsaac is a pro-marginalized and policy influencing organization working for social transformation and enhanced living conditions of citizens. The organization connects its constituents to issues of improved economic opportunities, healthcare delivery, better educational outcomes, peace and stable communities, and social protection in Ghana. Norsaac is located in Tamale, in the northern part of Ghana, which is rural in nature. And in this part of the country, we have a lot of cultural and sociocultural norms that affect a lot of the programs that we do. And we also have about 75% of the population being Muslims, which also has its own effect. Thank you very much.
Just to ask you a couple of questions about Norsaac and about your programming. We've been partnering with you for a long time, but it would be great to hear more about the journey that you've been on at Norsaac. Why and when did you start focusing on very young adolescent girls? What's sort of the history of that work with girls? And maybe just you could give us a couple of examples of some of the opportunities and challenges that you faced in that work with very young adolescent girls.
Thank you very much. Just as I ended it with the sociocultural barriers that we have. In this part of the country, hello?
Go ahead, Hafsa.
Okay. It's echoing. Sorry. In this part of the country, we have challenges of adolescents not being part of any decision-making process. Young adolescents currently get pregnant at their younger age. Also, we are challenged with a lot of sexual abuse within this age range. We also have a lot of them who do not have any information about their sexual reproductive health. And so all these are some of the challenges that we have. And initially, a lot of programs have not been tailored to capture very young adolescents. Though we have some of these challenges, there are some opportunities that we feel that we can still explore. For instance, we know that very young adolescents, they also listen only mode. Very young adolescents, we know that they have their own lives and they also participate in decision making. We have community people who also have their concern and would want to engage and give them the opportunity to also participate at their own level. Currently, parents are also concerned about the high teenage pregnancy rate. And so we think that it is also an opportunity. Once there's a concern from parents, it is also a window of opportunity for us to engage better at the community level and engaging the very young adolescents.
Thank you, Hafsa. And I guess I was thinking back about a couple of the findings that are in the report and about the model at Norsaac. And I guess we're all trying to sort of get a clear sense of how you have tailored your programming approach specifically for the very young adolescent girls. So I think what's amazing about Norsaac, and we know this from our work with you at EMpower, is that you have a very holistic approach. You focus on community, specific community members, stakeholders, parents. So it's very holistic. And what you've also managed to do is begin to tailor your program approach for the very young adolescent girls. So could you just give us a couple examples of what are the activities or the program design that you've sort of come to now that really has been able to bring in more and more of the very young adolescent girls, 10 to 14?
Yes, thank you very much. I think our work with EMpower, UNICEF, and Plan International Ghana has given us a lot of experiences in terms of engaging very young adolescents. Over the years, we had to always put adolescents together between the ages of 10 to 19, forgetting that they have differences in terms of the needs that they actually have. And so based on that, we have been able to come out with a holistic approach of engaging community people through participatory methods and also creating space for them to be able to engage. So we have safe spaces for adolescents, very young adolescents, so that they can engage through their own activities. And at this age, they do a lot of learning as they play. And so most of the activities they are engaging is they are participatory in nature. It's more of games that they use. And so they learn their reproductive health through that. They learn how to build their leadership roles and all that through the games that they have mostly in their communities. There are also mentoring and coaching processes that we engage them through communities, of course, mostly the community identify role models, and then the girls engage those role models within the communities. We also have an approach called the male support system. We call it male transformation or gender transformative programming. So mostly we just want to see how the boys and the men would understand the female challenges and be able to face that reality and give their own support, not being forced. So these are some of the approaches that we come up with. We don't also forget that most of these challenges that the young adolescents have, some of them are economically driven. And so some of the programs are tailored to have some economic empowerment components so that parents who go through that process would be able to support their very young adolescent girls to move on with their lives.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And I hope that the audience members can start to really get a clear picture of what these programs look like at Norsaac. And I think probably for now, because you might have some questions during the Q&A for you, I want to just ask you one more question, which is, what have you seen in terms of the results or the outcomes specifically for those younger girls? So for the 10 to 14-year-old girls, you talked earlier about maybe some of the issues, and Favor talked about some of them too, you know, lack of confidence. And then you mentioned, Hafsa, early child pregnancy or early pregnancy, child marriage, sexual exploitation. I know it takes a very long time, and transformational programs like this do need time and space, but have you started to see results, and what outcomes have you seen with the very young adolescent girls specifically?
Yes, I must say that currently we are very happy as an organization, and we are proud to say that we now have a lot of our young girls who are confident to even report sexual abuse cases. A lot of them have also reported child marriage threats, and for us, this is the level we have reached. This used not to happen, but now we find these girls who do not want that, who come to report to us, and most of them are channeled through the state institutions to address them. That is the level at which we have come, and this shows that the girls are now confident to engage. And now we even see community people, they are scared of even giving out their girls for marriages. And I think Rafia is here who will contribute to that. I am sure that even when you go to some of the communities, they will tell you that based on some of these interventions, they don't even have child marriage issues in their communities anymore. We are currently still battling teenage pregnancy, but we want to also say that this has also minimized. It's not as before. And so these are some of the results that we have had, and we are proud as an organization. We hope that other organizations will come on board to support grassroots organizations to champion, especially trying to reach out to very young adolescents. We know that when we catch them young, we are able to build them better. And so doing programs of very young adolescents is important, which for me is something that we should go on with. Karen, thank you.
Thank you, Hafsa. Thank you so much. And now we're going to actually hear from Rafia, who is in one of your programs and can tell us what it's actually like from her own daily reality perspective. Favor, I'm going to hand the mic back to you.
Thank you, Kristen. Rafia, I'm so excited to get to talk to you today because you're the reason why we're here, like I said before. So I'm so happy to get to talk to you. I have some few questions for you, Rafia. I know you know it already, but let me tell you again how privileged you are and how privileged adolescent girls like us are to experience this girls program in our communities. Please tell us how your participation in Norsaac programs have supported you at this stage of your life.
I'm happy for your opportunity. My name is Mohamed Rafia. I live with my parents in Languru. I'm 14 years old. I'm a student of Tanzi Ejina High School in the Karaga district of Northern Ghana. I want to share my experience as an early adolescent who is the early stage of life. Since 2016, I have been engaged in many activities in my community, organized by Norsaac. I'm a member of Adolescent Club in my community. We discuss a lot of issues. As a member of Adolescent Club, we discuss a lot of things among ourselves. We have mentors. We usually discuss our problems in our club. The mentors are members of our communities too. Our parents don't usually come to our meeting grounds, so sometimes Norsaac holds separate meeting with us too. So sometimes Norsaac also come to our school to engage our teachers. In some of our meetings, they bring some nurses to talk to us about menstrual hygiene, dangers of child marriage, and teenage pregnancy common in our community, and other problems that we face. Thank you.
Wow, Rafia, I know we can't just say thank you enough for these great opportunities, right? Thank you for sharing that, Rafia. Again, it is just so great to be able to participate in such creative girl-focused programs. And even as we mentioned earlier that we are so privileged to experience such programs, we still encounter challenges sometimes. Please, Rafia, tell us about some of the challenges you have experienced participating in Norsaac programs.
Initially, our parents didn't want us to attend the adolescent club meeting. So sometimes when you want to go, they also want you to go to their farm or their stream. Also, sometimes when you want to visit the nurse at their facility, you may find so many adults there and you feel scared to go because you don't want them to see you. Thank you.
Wow, Rafi, I can really relate to that. I know when I have really important meetings or important things to attend to, and my parents keep on telling me I need to do some house chores before I go, or I need to fetch water and sweep the house and keep everywhere clean. I can really, really, really relate to that, Rafia. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, thank you for being vulnerable enough to share your challenges with us. How about we switch it now to the good part? What are some of the challenges and some of the opportunities you have experienced while participating in Norsaac programs?
Now I have great opportunities than before. Through Norsaac, I had the opportunity of meeting female nurses, through which I developed interest of becoming a nurse. I have also increased my confidence, both at home and in school. I considered participating in this meeting as another great opportunity to celebrate and share my story. Thank you.
Okay, Rafia, tell us again, how old were you when you started experiencing these programs with Norsaac?
12.
Wow, you were 12 years old. That is so, so, so amazing. Finally, Rafia, please tell us your message to the adults, because I'm sure there are lots of adults here who want to hear from you, the NGOs, the practitioners, the researchers, and the donors on this webinar, who want to ensure that young girls like you get access to safe, quality, effective programs like the ones you've experienced at Norsaac. What will you like to say to them, Rafia?
We want more adults to understand our problems and challenges so that they can help us to grow well and in good health. I'm happy Norsaac came to our community because I think our parents now are not so hard on us, and also the health workers. When they see us, they ask us about our problems. I used to feel scared that my father will give me out for marriage. Now I'm confident he will not because he is much concerned about my school. I want to thank Norsaac and also thank our teachers and parents and all those who are supporting with the very young adolescents. I want to be a nurse someday. I don't want to marry out whilst I'm still in school. Thank you.
Yeah, I can really relate to what you just said now. Remember, I shared my own experience, and it's great coming out from your own mouth. It just tells you how much we young adolescent girls go through. And I also don't want to be married off without my consent. At least I want to have this opportunity of meeting my prince charming and getting to fall like every other adolescent girl wants. So I really, really relate to what you just said. Thank you so much, Rafia. You are the reason why we are here this moment. Very young adolescent girls are the reason why we are here to share and learn together. I believe that we have all listened to you share your experience with us. We all understand better now that girls are asking that you respect us, value us, listen to us, and understand that we are learning and need your support. We are strongest together. Thank you all. So over to you, Kristen.
Thank you, Rafia. Thank you, Favor. Yeah, I think it's incredibly important that all of us got to hear Rafia's experience so far as a 14-year-old. And Rafia, we can't wait to hear about the rest of your journey with Norsaac and through middle and older adolescence. Yeah, really looking forward to hearing more from you and from Hafsa as things continue to go from strength to strength at Norsaac. So we have about 15 minutes now for questions and answers. So if you haven't submitted a question, please feel free to do so. I do have a couple of questions to start us off with that have been submitted. So we are trying to organize the questions sort of by the findings of the report, and then obviously want to ensure that we have girls' voices and practitioner voices in the answers as well as the researchers. The first question I'm going to ask is going to go to Emily, and it's about finding number two. It's about finding number two, which is meaningful involvement of very young adolescent girls is critical to success. So the question is, in terms of best practices, how much is the right amount of involvement from very young adolescent girls? Is it enough to speak with girls in the beginning? Is there a dosage that is the right amount of dosage throughout the life cycle of the program? So I think the question is really about when we say meaningful involvement in order for the program to have its best success, what did you learn through the report in terms of what that looks like? When we say meaningful, what do we mean? So Emily, that's for you.
Hi there. So thank you for that really interesting question. I think that one of the most remarkable things about what we found at these local grassroots organizations was that they really were involving very young adolescent girls and adolescent girls in general through the program cycle. So they did certainly have that moment at the beginning, the formative moment where they go and they have, you know, get girls' input as they're designing the program. And that, I think, a lot of organizations are doing, and it's also sort of essential to having girl-driven programs. But these programs, what was so interesting about these grassroots programs were that they were doing that, but then the girls were also involved in a sort of iterative way across, you know, the entire organic evolution of the program. So they kept getting girls' input and they kept changing in response to sort of their needs, but also their interests and their capacities, and that the girls themselves would have the chance to grow with the program and take on bigger roles with those organizations and those programs over time. So you got the girls, and this is amazing sort of in terms of the longitudinal work that some of these organizations are getting with these girls. I think that's why we see this, especially in grassroots organizations that are committed to particular communities. Those organizations get a chance to see girls for a long period of time, invest in those girls, keep investing in them, and then they grow throughout the program, but they also influence the program through its full life cycle, if that answers the question.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So it sounds like what you're saying is, of course, it's critical to include them at the beginning of sort of front loading the design of the program, but also most of the programs that had the most success in terms of results, progress for girls, measurable results, I guess, are the ones that actually involve the girls continuously throughout the life cycle. So I suppose, yeah, everyone who's listening that works for an implementing partner or as a funder, that will vary, obviously, depending on the segment of girls, the location, the context, etc. If it's gender synchronized, etc. But I guess the headline, from if I'm hearing you correctly, Emily, is just that there are touch points throughout the program life cycle, and that we are listening to girls, learning from them, and that they're involved in, I guess, the evolution of the program as it progresses and as it matures. Is that a good sort of summary?
Absolutely. Like no clear, it varies by context and no clear, dosage, but absolutely yes, that's what I would say.
Great, thanks, Emily. So that was finding number 2. There's a question, I'm not sure which finding to categorize it under, but I think it's a question for you, Jen, to start, Jennifer, and then maybe if we have time, Hafsa, you can also answer as well from the Norsaac point of view. The question is quite specific. They would like to know, what did you find, Jen, in the research in terms of, again, best practice around compensating the peer educators? We talked a lot in the report about peer educators, female mentors, or girl leaders, which is now what Favor is doing. So were there any findings around best practice compensation for girl leaders, mentors, peer educators?
Again, the findings are very varied, and each each program has its own approach to to managing this issue and this question. And through this research and other related research, we've seen obviously increasing demand and justification for compensating young people for their very important and critical and distinct contributions to programs. What we tend to see in terms of patterns, I guess, in the research is that, oftentimes the girls start as participants, and then, as Emily mentioned, where there are opportunities for them to kind of age up within organizations and programs to take on increasing roles of responsibility, and including in delivering aspects of the programming and working in different dimensions of the organizations. And we're certainly seeing, I would say, a greater tendency for organizations to recognize those contributions as they would other employees in the organization, and begin to think much more critically about compensating them financially, as well as, of course, the opportunities that they get through the training and opportunities to travel potentially, and other things that tend to be part of program experience for girls as they age through programs in different kinds of organizations. And I think it would be interesting to hear from Hafsa specifically about how they're managing that particular issue in their programming.
Definitely. Hafsa, if you can, how does Norsaac compensate, either financially or otherwise, to the mentors or the peer educators in your programs?
Okay, so there are several ways that we use as a form of motivating the young people, especially when we engage them in programs. As peer educators, a lot of them are still in school, some are not in school. So those who have opportunities of still going further, we try to see how we encourage them through other exposure. So for instance, we have conferences that mostly we have for young people that we allow some of them to participate depending on how active they are. And they serve as role models, and some of them see this as an opportunity and see that as growth. These are some of the things that we do. In terms of monetary, we only support when somebody is in need of going to school and has requested for that, because sometimes you also do it based on the need of the person. So mostly these are some of the packages that we do. We also do motivate them by giving them artifacts. Some of them have t-shirts, school bags and all that, just to support them move on. So there are several packages that we have depending on the situation of the peer educator.
Thank you, Hafsa. I have one more question for you, Hafsa, at Norsaac. I'm going to ask it now, but I'm going to give you a chance to think about it. And I'm going to, so I'll ask it, and then I'm going to actually go to Favor for the next question. So the question, Hafsa, for Norsaac is also one of the recommendations is around increasing learning across country, within a country, or region, to look at more cross-learning and I guess communities of practice, especially for grassroots organizations or smaller groups. So when you saw that finding, what would you say from the Norsaac point of view would be really helpful, you know, as you want to take your work to the next level, you want to share what you've learned, but also learn from others. So it's a question for you around sharing and learning with others and communities of practice. I'll come back to you in just a second. So I want the next question to go to Favor. Favor, question came in for you, which is, let me just reread it. Favor, if you could design a program, everything you know now, if you could design a program for 10 to 14-year-old girls like you in Nigeria, you know, if somebody said, here you go, Favor, here's $50,000, what would that program include? What would be the key elements of the program that you would design for 10 to 14-year-olds like you in Nigeria?
Thank you, Kristen. I will design a fun, creative program to help girls identify their voice and build their confidence, because I strongly believe that girls' voices really, really count. I will also help them learn about their rights and how to speak out when it's being violated. Because when you know your rights, you know when it's being violated. Not just knowing your rights, but being able to speak out when it's being violated. Then I'll give them basic education about puberty, menstruation, hygiene, and sexual and reproductive health and rights. And finally, I would encourage girls in STEM education. So girls will build STEM skills early. I know that this will be so much fun because we have older girls that can mentor them. And you know, girls really love fun programs. So I'll add a little bit of fun games and events and fun, exciting activities that are really going to be interested in. Thank you.
Thank you, Favor. Thank you, Favor. Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important what you said about focusing on girls' voice at that young age. And as you were talking about your own story earlier, you know, the fact that you did develop your voice and you are so powerful and your voice is so motivating and inspiring today. But it, you know, it wasn't until you were in your later adolescence. So I really hear you when you say helping younger girls to develop their own voice and know their rights. But at the same time, they're young. They're 10, 11, 12, 13. So having fun, making it participatory, and keeping play a part of that too. So thank you so much, Favor, for that answer. I will go back to Hafsa now, and let's go back to the question on what would be most useful for you right now, Hafsa, at Norsaac in terms of shared learning with others and a community of practice or practices. So Hafsa, the last question that I'm going to ask is for you, and it's just around what I mentioned earlier around communities of practice, sharing learning with organizations that work also at the community level, both in Ghana but also maybe regionally. Hafsa, I don't know if you can, if your audio is working. I'm just going to move on to the last question, and if you can jump on, let me know, Hafsa. Otherwise, the last question was actually a question about EMpower. I said, which countries are you in? Where are your grantee partners? So EMpower is in 15 countries. We are in emerging market countries globally. So the countries we work with our grantee partners in include countries in Latin America, East and Southeast Asia, India, Turkey, Russia, South Africa, Ghana, and Nigeria. So all 15 countries are on our website. And in a few minutes, I'm going to go through a little bit more where our girls' work is and where our girls' portfolio is the largest and growing. So I'll talk about some of those countries in more detail in a minute. But yes, EMpower is in 15 countries. I don't know if we have Hafsa back on the line or if I should move on to our last poll question. Okay. I think we'll move on to the last poll question number 3. So this again is our last opportunity to ask you all in the audience something. You've seen the recommended next steps, the recommendations in the report. We would love to know from everyone listening today, what do you think out of those action steps or recommendations are the highest priority? So you can select only one here. So before you could select many, today on this one, we're asking you just to select one. Out of the recommendations, providing local organizations that focus on very young adolescent girls with the resources they need to sustain and grow, linking practitioners to exchange and to coordinate, facilitating specifically research and practice partnerships, promoting platforms for local community-based organizations to share and highlight their work, acting as a catalyst to elevate the programming at the grassroots levels, specifically for very young adolescent girl programming. So again, providing local organizations with the resources they need to sustain and grow, those organizations that are working with very young adolescent girls. Number 2, linking those practitioners all around, north, south, east, west, to exchange and to coordinate, facilitating research and practice partnerships, promoting platforms so that local community-based organizations can share their work and amplify their work, or to act as a catalyst to elevate grassroots programming. And again, programming specifically here, we mean very young adolescent girl programming. So please pick one. We'll give you a few more, about 30 more seconds. Okay, the results are in. Really interesting. So half of you think that providing local community-based groups with the resources to sustain and grow is the highest priority. We have a tie between facilitating research, practice partnerships, and acting as a catalyst to elevate that programming for very young adolescent girls, with a close one being promoting platforms for the local organizations to share and highlight their work. And a small number of you, but I'm sure an important number of you, to make sure that we have an exchange across north-south and that learning is happening in all directions. Really interesting. Thank you all so much for submitting those answers. All right, we're coming to the last 10 minutes of our session together today. So I'm going to say a few words and then I'm going to hand it over to Favor to say a few closing remarks as well. So this has been an incredible privilege. It's been amazing to work even more closely with Norsaac, with Hafsa, and with Rafia, to work with Jen and Emily, who are both world-class researchers and girl allies, and definitely to work with Favor and the Girls' Voices Initiative team in Nigeria. It's been a real privilege. As I said earlier, EMpower, we're on our 20th year. We have had a growing focus on adolescent girls now for about 14 years. Just in the last 2 years, our focus on girls has even become deeper and stronger. We have been able to make 38 grants in the last 2 years. Those 38 grants have gone to 26 of our partners, and those 26 partners are in 11 countries. They are in Argentina. If you're listening, they are in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Ghana, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Peru, Philippines, South Africa, and Vietnam. And that's just in the last 2 years. In terms of next steps, I think for EMpower, we have a girl strategy at EMpower, and our programmatic portfolio includes an intentional spotlight on very young adolescent girls. We are committed to deepening this work. We are committed to deepening this work with community-based partners that are supporting. We aim to support them continuously with finance and grants, but also with cross-learning and with communities of practice, so they can share their expertise and shorten the learning curve for other groups that may be in the same country or in a different region. We are committed to amplifying those groups, our grantee partners, and their intersectional and their intergenerational work. And we hope that by amplifying their work, we can have an impact across the gender justice, youth development, and philanthropy sectors. There are many of you in the audience today tuning in and listening. And I just wanted to reiterate that it's each of us, every one of us on the call today has now, like I said at the top of the call, we all have a window of opportunity right now, along with the groups that are on the panel, but also everybody that's dialed in. Along with people who haven't dialed in, there are so many in development and philanthropy and in gender justice. Now is the time, as I was saying at the top of the call, this is a pivotal moment to double down, triple our efforts on the intersectional, intergenerational efforts and commitments to very young adolescent girls. I firmly believe we need to do this so that very young adolescent girls like Rafia can continue to step into their power and to reimagine their world and their future, one that is safe and where they have dignity and their voice. For girls like Rafia and all the girls that Favor was calling out and applauding earlier on the webinar. There is some volatility in philanthropy right now, and what I want to say, this report lifts up very clearly that programs that have the most impact, and what the research lifts up is that the programs that have the most impact with and for very young adolescent girls are those that offer long-term flexible support. This is a really important point. On this note, I want to thank the NOBO Foundation specifically, because without them, this work would not be possible. I'd also like to thank the With and For Girls Collective for continuing to support organizations that are girl-led and girl-centered, like Girls' Voices Initiative, and so that we can hear from more and more girls like Favor. So again, thank you, NOBO Foundation. Thank you, With and For Girls. Those are my closing statements for now. Hopefully I'll see many of you online again soon. I'm going to hand the mic back over to Favor. Favor, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. I'm having an amazing time and I don't want us to close, but sadly, we have to wrap this up and continue sharing our learning with very young adolescent girls in our communities. But before we leave, let me remind you that the webinar was recorded and is available. Just click the link here. Also, the presentations will be sent to all participants on this webinar today. And please visit ibpnetwork.org for more information. Now, we cannot leave without appreciating the co-host of this webinar, IBP Initiative. IBP Initiative is the Implementing Best Practices Initiative, a network of over 70 NGOs, academia, donors, and UN partners dedicated to sharing evidence-based guidelines and practices in family planning and reproductive health through innovative knowledge exchange, implementation, and partnership. IBP is hosted at the World Health Organization. Thank you, IBP. I also want to appreciate the wonderful team of EMpower, Norsaac, and Girls' Voices, who worked behind the scenes to deliver this great webinar. Thank you all. And to all the wonderful, very young adolescent girls, older adolescent girls, NGO, practitioners, researchers, and donors on this insightful webinar. I appreciate you all for your time and dedication to the presentation. The poll and audience question and all the experience sharing we have engaged today. Thank you all. I wish you all a good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and remember, we are strongest together. Bye, everyone.